speaking of one more talk, we were talking about documentation, and this leads us pretty nicely into our last talk of the block. We've got Jeremy Rose coming to tell us about the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Cataclysm. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thanks, Christy. I'll go ahead and get started. So the world has ended. You don't know what caused it. The dead walk the streets. Giant insects rise from the swamps. And still stranger and more terrible things from beyond are intruding on your reality. This is Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead. And I'm Jeremy Rose. So to be clear, Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead is not my game. I did not write it, though I have contributed some code to it. In fact, in some ways, I think it's nobody's game, which is something I really love about it, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. So today, I'm mostly going to be talking about a companion tool that I made for Cataclysm called the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Cataclysm. I want to tell you about why and how I made it, but first I want to tell you a little bit about the game itself. So Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead is an open-ended survival roguelike game set in the near-future northeastern United States. There are zombies, crafting and disassembly, hunger and thirst mechanics, combat, looting, and modifiable vehicles. You can become a mutant, or a cyborg, or hide out in the woods and make anesthetic from cattail jelly. It has the usual intricate character creation screens. It has a beautiful overmap, which can end up as big as your hard drive will allow. You can nomad your way from town to town along the highways, or you can build a following of NPCs and construct your own fortified base. And there's no explicit end goal in Cataclysm. Your goals are for you to decide. So it's decidedly simulationist in approach. And here's my obligatory slide about the definition of a roguelike. These are the criteria from the infamous Berlin interpretation. Cataclysm does these ones. I don't really know what these ones mean. I think exploration to discovery is something about potion identification. So Cataclysm is guaranteed at least 80% roguelike. Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead started out as just Cataclysm, this really ambitious project by a single developer, Zachary Jenkins, also known as Wales, in 2010. And at that time, open world survival sandbox games weren't really a thing. That was like a year before Minecraft was released. I found this screenshot of one of the early versions of Cataclysm, and I love that it looks like the player has eaten their own arm, which has somehow helped with their mental acuity. I don't think eating your own arm is in the game anymore, but a lot of the other elements from this screenshot are immediately recognizable in current versions of the game. Eventually, Wales moved on from the project, and in 2013, a community fork arose adding the Dark Days Ahead moniker, and stewardship of the project shifted to the Darkling Wolf and Kevin Grenade, and Kevin is still quite involved with the project. So since the original Cataclysm is no longer an active project, I'm going to use Cataclysm and Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead interchangeably to refer to the Dark Days Ahead fork. Since its beginning, over 1,700 individuals have contributed to Cataclysm, which makes it actually one of the largest open source, not just open source games, but one of the largest open source projects in existence. So for comparison, Python, the programming language, has had a little over 2,000 contributors over its lifetime, which is not much more than Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead, despite it being 3 times older. And a programming language is not a game. So here are some other open source games and their contributor counts for comparison. So the next largest number of contributors to an open source game is about 1,150 with Space Station 13. So Cataclysm really has a lot of people contributing to it, which I think is gets at why I said I feel like it's nobody's game. This is a real amalgam of many different ideas coming together, which I think is really cool. So Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead is this incredibly intricate game. When my friend first introduced me to it, his pitch was that it was a roguelike game where you can choose what order your armor is layered in, and that stuff is just catnip to me, so obviously I was immediately hooked. The game has over 8,000 different items in it, and each one has a defined mass, volume, length, material composition, and so on. Most of those items can be crafted or disassembled too if you can scavenge the right tools. And the game's core design tenet is that if it works in reality, it should work in the game. So there's this incredibly rich simulation going on. Like, okay, items have a temperature. There are seasons in the game, and the setting is roughly based on New England in the northeastern United States, and it gets cold up there in the winter. So say you find a bottle of drink. In the winter, all the bottles of drinks you find are going to be frozen solid. If you want to drink them, you've got to find a way to thaw them out. Like maybe you light a fire, perhaps. But make sure you light it in an oven or some other container like a brazier, because if you start a fire on the floor of a house, well, houses are flammable. It'll catch, spread, and eventually set the whole house on fire. And as parts of the house burn, they're going to fall to the ground. And collapsing beams are loud. And loud noises attract zombies. Actually, starting a house fire is a pretty good tactic for distracting zombies from some other juicier location that you're interested in looting. So Cataclysm is trying to simulate something like the real world. But like all simulations, it necessarily simplifies. And the ways in which it simplifies are not obvious. For example, one of the tools that a lot of important crafting recipes need in the game is a welder. I'm a programmer, I don't really know that much about welding. So where might my Cataclysm character find an arc welder? I want to find one in order to craft a spear or something. When I think about Cataclysm's design philosophy, I could think about like where would I find a welder in real life? Maybe like a car repair shop? Do those exist in Cataclysm? I've seen a location sometimes called a garage. Maybe I could try there. Maybe I could build a welder out of spare parts. My character doesn't know the recipe, but maybe there's a book in the game with the instructions for that. Can my character go on a laptop and visit Instructables to find these instructions for building a arc welder out of microwave parts? There would be in real life, right? So I played a lot of Cataclysm, and I kept on stumbling into these kinds of questions about how the world worked. Where do I look for duct tape? What tools have the metal sawing quality? How dangerous is a giant slug? What can I do with a chunk of mutant meat? What kinds of fuel can I power a steam engine with? I had these questions about like the physics of the game. I wanted to understand the systems. So talking about modding systems, Cataclysm is a heavily data-driven game. So all of the nouns in the game, items, monsters, terrain, furniture, what limbs a character has, what kinds of martial arts there are, all of those nouns are defined in these data files written in JSON. Many of the verbs that the characters can use are also largely defined in JSON as well. So I often found myself answering questions that I had about how the world of Cataclysm worked by searching through the game's data files. I'd search for an item's name to find its ID, then I'd search for that ID to find to find out what monsters dropped it or what locations I might find it in. And this was really tedious and repetitive, which was an immediate clue that I should spend way more time than I would have spent looking things up, creating a tool to make it easier. I think I'm like over here somewhere maybe. I've definitely spent way more than 6 days on this thing. So this is what the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Cataclysm looks like. It's an index of every item, monster, terrain, vehicle part, skill, tool quality, mutation, bionic, and a few other things besides in the game. The guide gathers up all the game's data files and indexes them and makes them linked and searchable. Each noun gets its own page with detailed information about that item, like how big it is, what's it made out of, how much does it weigh. And each kind of thing has different kinds of information based on what's relevant for that thing. So for a monster, you want to know what their offensive and defensive capabilities are, what their vision range is, and so on. For weapons, you want to know how much damage they deal, how slow they are to swing, and other information that's relevant to combat. For a vehicle part, you want to know how much power it produces or consumes, and what skills you need to install or remove it. So a lot of this kind of data is already visible in the game itself, assuming you can find one of these things. But I think the really valuable thing that the guide does is that it shows the links between things. Like, what skills do you need to repair an item? What books contain knowledge about those skills? What locations are those books found in? The goal of the guide is to make every relationship between the nouns in Cataclysm visible. This chart is really just a small fraction of the number of relationships between things because I ran out of space. And in the guide, every one of these links is two-directional. So the guide will show the reverse of any of these connections. And through these links, the guide illustrates the underlying systems of the world of Cataclysm. So for example, the guide will tell you that every item that a roll of duct tape is an ingredient for crafting. An aquarium, a makeshift shotgun, a bandage. It also has this obtaining section for every item, which will show you all the different ways you might be able to acquire a roll of duct tape in Cataclysm. You can craft it, for instance, using some thread and superglue and cotton patches, if you happen to have the right skill. Some monsters will drop it, although only rarely. You can pull it off a window that's being taped up, either by taking the tape off the window or by dismantling the window entirely. Or you can find it lying around in various different locations. And this bit was actually crazy complicated to build because Cataclysm's map generation data structures are quite expressive. And so reversing the map gen data into probabilities of each item appearing in that location was really difficult. It was actually so difficult that I didn't dare start on it until this guy, Andre, showed up on GitHub with the first 75% of the job done. So hooray for open source. So we show all these links between different things in the game, between items and their crafting ingredients, between items and monsters, between items and locations. And every link is paired with its reverse. So a taped window shows that it can be deconstructed to produce duct tape. And duct tape shows that it can be obtained by deconstructing a taped window. I think this is a really powerful feature of the guide. It often surfaces information that I wouldn't have thought to look for. For instance, that I might obtain duct tape by deconstructing a piece of the terrain in the game. I think that's a perfect example of the ways in which the guide illustrates the underlying systems of the game. After seeing this link in the guide, as a player I can now imagine more of my possible actions in the game. I can get items I need by deconstructing bits of terrain. What other stuff might I be able to get by deconstructing terrain? It looks like just from this taped window, I could also get a sheet of glass. I wonder what I could use that for, and so on. So a few things about the technical side of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Cataclysm. It's built as a web app, hosted as a static site on GitHub, using a little bit of trickery behind the scenes that allows collecting all of the Cataclysm data files without having to run my own server anywhere. And it functions fully offline too, so once the data for a particular version of the game is downloaded, which is about 3.5 megabytes of gzipped JSON, you can turn off your Wi-Fi connection and the guide will still be fully searchable and browsable. And it's built as a progressive web app, so you can install it and it gets its own window and a shortcut on your desktop and all that other good stuff. And here's a book you can find in Cataclysm, I guess. So Cataclysm itself is translated into 10 languages, and so the guide is too. Not that I speak 10 languages, unless like C++ counts. But both Cataclysm and the Hitchhiker's Guide crowdsource their translations through Transifex, which has been great. People have just showed up and translated a bunch of stuff. So thanks to everyone who's done that. So Cataclysm has a stable version, which releases like once every couple of years, and an experimental version that changes a lot, like a lot. In the last month, there were over 300 changes made to the game, and I swear I didn't plan this, but the kinds of terrain that you can obtain duct tape from changed while I was writing this talk. Like I wrote that slide, and 10 hours previously, somebody had changed that. So some of these changes, most of these changes are like adding content or fixing bugs, but some of them are changing the shape of the underlying data. So, for example, changing a number value to a string that includes units, or adding a number, like adding a new way of defining some data structure in the data files. And of course, the guide needs to know how the game's data is laid out. If the data changes form, the guide needs to be updated. Otherwise, it might show something incorrect, or worse, throw an error and show nothing at all. So I built an early warning system that detects those kinds of changes in the game's data. Whenever a new experimental release of Cataclysm is published, which is several times a day, a GitHub action pulls down the new data and runs the guide's tests over it. And the first test is just to render every single page that the guide can render, which takes a while because there are over 40,000 of them. And check that no errors are thrown and the strings undefined, not a number, and object don't appear. So like JavaScript day. And the second test that we run is a schema test. So the guide tests all the game's data objects against a JSON schema, which is the standard for specifying the shape of a JSON data object. Now there's no kind of formal schema that Cataclysm provides that the guide could check against. And there are over 100 different types of object in Cataclysm's data format, and collectively over 1,000 different kinds of properties. So hand authoring a schema for that would have been a bit of a nightmare. It would look something like this code on the left, this like long JSON schema object. Fortunately, I had already written TypeScript definitions for most of those types, which is a lot more succinct and easy to write than JSON schema. So on the right there, that's the TypeScript version, and then the JSON schema version is over there on the left. So I would much rather write that thing on the right. But I can't use that thing on the right to test that the game's objects are the right shape. Fortunately, it turns out there's a library for this. Somebody wrote a library called TypeScript JSON schema, which does exactly what it says on the tin. It turns these TypeScript types into JSON schema automatically. It's like not 100% perfect, but it does the job. And so whenever there's a new version of the game's data, we run it through the schema validator and check that it matches the shape that TypeScript expects, which has caught a bunch of schema changes that happened in the game. And so I was able to really quickly fix those. And it's also caught a few data errors in the game itself. So if you're a NetHack or an Angband or a crawl player, you might call the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Cataclysm a spoiler. You're supposed to discover these things through play, form mystical ideas about the hypothesized connections between events. And if you're looking at the spoilers, that's kind of cheating. I think that view is a little impoverished. There's, as far as I know, just a single known unspoiled NetHack ascension. Are we supposed to believe that every other ascension in NetHack was some kind of false victory? Perhaps you could argue that looking at the wiki isn't the intended experience, like the experience that the developers meant you to have while playing their game. But I think that's quite a leap. I've never loaded up a game to see an intro screen that says, "Don't look at the wiki." And if I did, I would immediately go and find the wiki. In any case, who cares what the author intends? This is the postmodern era. The author is dead. We're here to have fun. And speaking of fun, Studies have shown that spoilers increase enjoyment. Now look at that. Statistically significant increases in mean hedonic rating. You know you can count on researchers who use phrases like mean hedonic rating to know what fun is. So let's instead call these sorts of documents encyclopedias. Even though the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Cataclysm is called a guide, it doesn't actually tell you what to do in the game. It's not a walkthrough or a let's play. So I want to divide information from suggestion. An encyclopedia informs. A walkthrough suggests. An encyclopedia will tell you that bleach is corrosive, but it won't tell you not to drink it. And through the encyclopedia, we learn about the world of the game, and we come to understand it and wrap ourselves in it. But, you cry, doesn't an encyclopedia ruin the joy of discovery? That frisson of surprise and delight that you get when you turn a corner and exclaim, what the is that? I mean, like, yeah, a bit. But you can discover things in an encyclopedia too. In fact, browsing through the guide is one of the main ways that I interact with Cataclysm lately. And further, Cataclysm is, as previously mentioned, under really active development, and it's constantly changing. So even if you knew the game like the back of your hand 2 years ago, if you play it again today, you'll be up against different monsters with different abilities in different locations. And the guide does contain a few careful omissions. The last thing that I want to talk about before I wrap up is a personal insight that I stumbled across while I was making the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Cataclysm. I've struggled a lot with perfectionism, and that's not like a humble brag. It's not like I've made a ton of great stuff. I've torpedoed most of my own projects by deciding that they weren't good enough and would never be good enough to release, losing motivation and stopping working on them. It's not like, oh, my biggest flaw is that I work too hard. It's this debilitating form of self-sabotage. But The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Cataclysm was made in early 2021. In the hours while my newborn daughter was napping, the 15-minute interstices between cleaning bottles and changing diapers, and watching this impossibly precious little blob learn how to see and move. And in the face of that, what flaw could possibly matter? If the guide didn't have like the best font, or the ideal information layout, or support for every kind of thing in the game right out of the gate, like why should I care about that when it's so transparently unimportant? When I was thinking about becoming a father, I was afraid of losing myself, of being consumed by parenthood and becoming only a carer. But even before she could speak, my daughter was helping me to become more of myself. So thanks for listening. I hope I've given you a taste of what Cataclysm is all about, and I hope that I've convinced you that it's okay to have a little spoiler as a treat. Thanks for listening. I think we have time for questions.
Yes, hello. Thank you so much. This was
Hey, thanks, Chrissy.
this was so cool. I just want to call out one quote from the chat. I think this is from Rourke. I love going outside and not knowing what a tree is.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to sort of like immerse myself in the world of Cataclysm, and I think really being able to like look up things and understand how the game saw them was really this attractive proposition for me.
Yeah, totally. All right, we've got a couple questions on the note wall here.
Cool.
What is your favorite spoiler that increased your enjoyment of something? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Favorite spoiler that increased my enjoyment of something. There's a lot of movies like that I have never seen that I enjoy only by the things that I know that are spoilers about them. Like Soylent Green is People. I've never watched that movie, but I still enjoy this this aspect of them. even though I only know the spoiler about it. So I would say,
Yeah.
and I also have like when I watch like any horror movie, I always like skip ahead a few a few minutes to see what's going to happen after any like tense situation, because otherwise I'll just get like. So yeah, I would say that's some of the spoilers that I like give to myself.
Right on. Yeah, sorry, chat. Soylent Green spoilers. If you haven't seen that yet, well, now you know.
Your enjoyment of it may be increased.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. Looking at our notes. Does the guide support transitive relationships?
Oh, like A relates to B, which relates to C. There are a couple of parts in the guide where I have to transfer, go to links along the chain in order to get something, like get a piece of information that's relevant for an item. Usually that isn't surfaced exactly to the like in the user interface, but that could be an interesting way of going. Like so, for instance, like a map gen, like a little chunk of the terrain generation in the data will have like a palette attached to it in the data files, and then the palette says like which of these characters in the map corresponds to like what items and furniture and stuff should spawn there. And so I have, in order to show like an item spawns in a location, I have to go from the palette which contains the item reference, and then the map gen which contains the palette reference, and then the map gen has the location reference. And I have to like collapse those three layers in order to show anything, but to the user it just looks like a one-way link.
Which is fantastic. The user doesn't need to know all that.
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
don't need
I
to
think.
get lost.
Yeah, I think maybe if I was going to build this again from scratch, I would perhaps take a more. I would look into sort of triple stores, which is a kind of database which you can store. Triple is like thing A, thing B, and a relationship between thing A and thing B, and then that might be more interesting. Like you might be able to construct more interesting queries. Right now, the search function in the guide is just by text, by like the ID or name of an item or monster.
Yeah,
But it
well,
could be
you know.
interesting to search, like to have some more sophisticated query capacity.
Yeah, if you have some more downtime and just feel like building out a graph database, just go for it. Sure. And okay, I think we've got just one more minute. Do you think it would be possible to integrate the guide inside the game?
Yeah, actually. So this item actually exists in the game.
What?
This, this book actually existed before I built the guide, so and was the inspiration for the name. So, shout out to Yobo Banana on GitHub, who contributed a bunch to the game back in 2013 and hasn't been seen since. But one of the things they did was add this book. And you know, I never actually read the book in the game. I've found it in game before because there's no obvious mechanical effect. But if you do actually read the book, it gives you a random hint from the hints file, which I think is so cool. I think is like perfectly in line with what I'm trying to do with the guide. But yeah, I would love to integrate them some. Like I've thought about making it so that if you're looking at an item in the game, there'll be some automatic way to like pop up the guide page for it on the right. But so that would be like an interesting thing to try. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, Christy.
This has been
Yeah,
great.
and thanks everyone for questions.